What's shaking, everybody? Welcome to a Overreaction Monday on an actual Monday. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Anwar Richardson. This show brought to you by our amazing friends over at Rogue Shop. Do them a solid. Write them a Google review today. Go check out the website. Go see all of the things that they've got cooking over at rogueshop.com. I'm on the website right now, and they've got everything that you need, from the CBD topicals to the oils to the Delta 8 products, the vape carts. I've got one right here on where I may test it out here in a second.
Okay.
When you're sick, it's hard.
I saw you test it out after coming out of your sickness last week. Wasn't a pretty sight, kid.
No, and it wasn't better during the weekend. I am still at that point where I've got that kind of congestion from the flu, but I may try it today. We'll see. As you're firing off a hot take in a moment, maybe I'll go into that. But they got the CBD, THC beverages, the hemp flowers. They've got stuff from pets. My Weimaraner loves the CBD products from Rogue Shop. You just drop the little oil in their mouth, and it just chills them out. And one of my dogs absolutely loves it, craves it, can't get enough of it. Thanks to everybody jumping into the Specs chat. We appreciate it. Send us your super chats. You cut right to the front of the line. And as Alan says, smash that like button, get notifications, and subscribe to the page, and do all of those things. We're not quite at the midway point of camp, right? I think we've seen 5 or 6 practices. They're actually practicing right now this morning, the Texas Longhorns. But there's been enough camp onward that I thought today might be a good Overreaction Monday topic to just fire out a couple of our hottest takes related to what has been seen so far, observed, sourced out, you name it, about this team through the first couple of weeks of spring workouts. I'm curious. Do you have a hot take just itching to get out?
I think I got an interesting take. I mean, it's something we've touched on before, Catch, but I think it's relevant to what we're talking about today, and also plays on a little bit what you wrote in your 10 thoughts of the weekend, which is, I feel like Texas is at that point where they're just a big boy program, and if you ain't on your game, you're going to get left behind. And I feel like the days of this Texas being this kind of YMCA program where everybody shows up and gets a chance to play through attrition or not having enough available bodies, I feel like those days are gone, Catch. And Catch, I was thinking about it this morning, right? Think back to some of our classic battles that we've had through the years. You and I, for 2 years, argued if Zach Shackelford was good. That's where the program was. Like, you and I had to argue, was he good? Not great. Not a potential first rounder. Not like the next great thing since. We literally were arguing over good. So
I don't even know that that's the worst of our crusades against each other over the years. I'm never going to forget Brennan Eagles versus Caden Stearns.
Yeah.
Mostly because Brennan Eagles turned out to not be a drafted player. And after a very brief cup of coffee at training camp with the Cowboys, that was kind of it for him. And you had Caden Stearns, who was an okay college player, and he's an okay NFL player, but it's better days in 2024 than we've seen in previous years. And if nothing else, the least hot take I can provide is it's nice covering a really good program. It is.
Yeah, it really, really is. Because, I mean, again, I go back to, I was thinking about the Zach Shackelford argument. We were at a point, Tristan Nicholson was starting, at the University of Texas, Tyrone Swoops, I guess I'm throwing out all kinds of just random, shots at people. Dylan Haynes, we were talking about, oh my God, look at the progression of Dylan Haynes. Those guys don't even play on this year's team.
They're solid college players, but where we've reached the point in Steve Sarkisian's program at Texas is that solid college players isn't enough.
No.
You know, when we talk about players on the roster who are fighting to keep their jobs, I think Hayden Connor is a perfect example. He's a solid college football player. And this is a college football staff that's looking at every position on the field. They want better than that. They want plus players. They want future NFL players. They want guys who at their position are among the best in college football. And that's the challenge if you're on this roster. Being good isn't good enough. And in some cases, being very good isn't good enough. And I think that if you're going to compete for championships, that's where the bar is. And I think about when you would make the comment about how many 5 stars does it take to beat TCU, I think it's sometimes overlooked the fact that TCU's not the bar that Texas, at least the fan base, was trying to ascend to. The reality is Texas fans never looked at that TCU would beat Texas, and Texas fans would just glance right over that, and they would say, how do we beat Georgia and Alabama? And then you and I would say, why are you even thinking about Georgia and Alabama?
Correct.
You can't beat TCU. And around and around and around we went. But they're beyond that now. TCU and the likes of Tech and Oklahoma State, they're no longer the bar. It's one of the reasons why people like MB Horns can't say it enough on Orange Bloods. They can't wait till the fall because the new bar is Georgia. The new bar is Alabama. The new bar in the SEC. If you're going to succeed, you have to be one of the nation's elite. And the Longhorns have put themselves into a position to be talked about and discussed in this manner. And you can see it on the practice field. You can see it with the talent in this program. Yesterday was Easter. Thank you, Jesus, for getting us to this place where Anwar and I can do these Monday shows. And it's not bordering on like the line of pathetic where it's like, let's pick a guy who's not even going to be a future NFL player and argue for 12 months on whether or not that guy is a good player.
Good. I know. But now we're at the point, Catch, that we're talking about. To your point, now those good players, those guys are going to get probably flushed out the system at some point. You can be good, but that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for great. And if you're just good, and you touched on a lot of it on the guys on Sunday, good players. And probably 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, those guys through attrition would have probably been starters. But you know what? Alfred Collins, he was just good for several years. And they're like, that's not good enough for us. Vernon Broughton, he was good for a few years. That wasn't good enough for them. Now they're getting on the field because you have to hit a certain level. And that's why I say the whole days of this YMCA, everybody shows up and you just get a chance to play because you're at Texas. No, we're going to, when we get out of spring, you're going to have good players who are going to have to find places to play elsewhere. And there won't be anything wrong with that. It'll be just like when they would do the comparisons of the Alabamas of the world and the Georgias of the world, and they lose some good players. They do. But you know why they lose good players? Because they got great players ahead of them, and those teams, for the most part, ain't tripping. Now, Alabama now is a little bit different than it was before, because before, Catch, that's when a guy, so we know some of those. I hate to pick on the Ben Davis, right? But those are the kind of guys that left Alabama. You're like, whatever, And I think now, for instance, we're at a point now when a Malik Murphy leaves, and you say to yourself, well, it makes sense because Arch Manning is there. So go be great somewhere, and he might be great, when he at Duke, but that wasn't going to cut it here. It's just the different levels where we're at right now.
Shout out to South End Zone Queen. Good to see you on a Monday morning. Are you South End Zone Queen? Let us know in the chat. Are you in Colorado right now? Have you made your way back to Texas? I'm never more jealous than when I see some of the photos of her and her friends and family like in the snow having a good time. the Green Lantern, which is a new username for me. Morning, gentlemen.
No, he's been around. He's been a good supporter of the old fashioned show for a while.
Well, I like the username. What
Yeah.
up, the Green Lantern? Let's see you on House Divided occasionally. Just throwing that out there. And yes, South End Zone Queen says, back in Colorado. I got a hot take for you, Anwar.
Yeah, man.
And it does kind of go against what we're talking about right now, where there's all of the talent. See, there's nuance in this, because no one, what I'm about to say isn't a suggestion that the wide receiver room isn't really, really talented. It is. I'll even buy the idea that, it has a chance. I think the Texas passing game is going to be better than it was a year ago. And I think a lot of that is because I'm anticipating Quinn Ewers. Boy, if Quinn could have a full 12-game season and he makes a subtle bump up in ability, if he was very good a year ago, whatever that next step is it damn good? Is then great beyond that? Like whatever the steps are, if he can take it, I'm fairly confident that the passing game will be maybe even better than it was a year ago. However, and I see Buck Wild, your super chat, will get to you in just a second. I do think Texas fans are slightly overrating this wide receiving unit in that just this weekend alone, I was asked, is this wide receiver unit in 2024 better than last year's wide receivers? I've been asked if I think it's the fastest wide receiver unit that the Longhorns have ever had, as if 4-2-1 didn't just exit the program. And Adonai Mitchell's the slow guy in the 4-3s. I think it's a wide receiver unit that Texas fans are hyping up a little too much. Hell, even Jonte Cook, who you and I both adore, had a practice the other day where in the first 20 minutes he dropped like 4 passes. So it's a work in progress. I think it can get there, but I think that if you're sitting at home right now and you're thinking to yourself, you know what I think? I think Jonte Cook, Isaiah Bond, and DeAndre Moore are better right now than Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell, and Jordan Whittington were a year ago. Maybe slow down just a little bit. I think the numbers could end up supporting that argument in 9 months. But I think a lot of that could deal directly with the improvement that Quinn Ewers make. And if your quarterback gets better and suddenly he's better than very good and he's damn good or even great, that's the tide that lifts all boats on offense. My big hot take on a Monday is everybody needs to slow down a little bit with the hyperbole at the wide receiver position. Those guys could ultimately get to the levels that we're talking about, but they're not there yet. And hey, guys, let's leave some space for these guys to improve. If you think they're already better than Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell and Jordan Whittington, then what room is there over the course of the next 9 months for them to grow? Is the next step for them to better than any of the Alabama wide receiver units that Sarkisian had to work with? Let's let them grow up a little bit. Let's give them a little bit of time. They're not there yet.
I think the challenge now is I think you got to blame Sark on this one. I think he's kind of spoiled Texas fans recently because there was that thought process like, come on, man, who's going to be better than Bijan? Like you guys are tripping if you think there's a running back better than Bijan. And then Jonathan Brooks, from a statistical standpoint, through those like whatever games it was before he got hurt, was technically, I think, better than Bijan in some categories, right? And then, I don't know if there was a lot of people who thought.
Yeah, but you never once thought last year that he was better than Bijan. Numbers be damned. What did your eyes tell you?
Yeah, well, no, he said it was good. I just said I remember I said from a statistical standpoint, right?
Yeah.
But that being said, you had people saying at that point, hey, he's the number 1 running back in the country. So at that point, you're thinking to yourself, see, look at that. And then it's like, we lost Keandre and lost Morrow, look at Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. See? And so I can see how a Texas fan could say, oh, catch. Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell. You just wait till the fall and see what's going to happen because this is what we do. To your point, it's not that easy, right? It's not that easy to say, like, this is just what we do. You're talking about a first rounder with Adonai Mitchell, and you're talking about a potential first rounder with Xavier Worthy. Look at 2 first-round receivers. That's the top 32 people in the country. Like, I'm not ready to say these groups with this group will have the top 32, but I can understand based off of what they've seen that they can tell themselves, oh, we are at a plug and play perspective.
Well, and look, would it shock me if Jonte Cook had a better statistical season? And I'd probably throw Isaiah Bond in there as well. Like, could one of those guys be a 1,100, 1,200 yard receiver this year? Yeah. Like I said, I think at the end of this season, Quinn Ewers' health permitting, I think this has got a passing offense that's got a chance to maybe set some records, passing yards wise, touchdown passes, those types of things. You know, your quarterback being a guy that's, if this should be the Ewers' best season. It's his 3rd season as a starter, presumably the last before he goes off to the NFL. We should see a spike here. It really will come down to health with Ewers, because if he does stay healthy, he's going to set new statistical, I think, bars that Arch Manning, that we'll have this exact conversation potentially in 12 months from today.
Yes.
Doing this exact same show. And it could be the guys, Arch isn't better than Quinn yet, but it could be that, you know, it only takes the next season for that to be a storyline that emerges, that maybe it is plug and play in a lot of areas. I don't dismiss that this wide receiver unit is going to be very good. I think it will be deeper. I think one of the things Sarkisian knows deep down he has to do this year is spread out the game reps a little bit more than he did a year ago. They've got to find a way to get Ryan Wingo on the field. You've got guys like Matthew Golden and Silas Bolden in the portal that you've made commitments to get on the field. Those guys didn't just come here to be backups, although Kendrick Blackshire is probably thinking the same thing, and he's 3rd-team linebacker right now. And I don't quite know what his pathway is to a significant role this season as long as Anthony Hill is healthy, but that is another discussion. Let's knock out a super chat real quick. Just because Buck Wild sent it like 5 minutes ago, $4 or $5. Anwar, the Texas defense had 32 sacks last season, led by Burke with 5.5. Over and under this year, 36.5. And who leads the team? Just for fun.
That's a fascinating question. It's a good question. So we got to take the over and under. So but I also got to factor in that this is an SEC schedule as well. However, 4 out of 5 games, 3 out of 4 games or something, or not against the greatest competition outside of Michigan before you get to OU. So they have a runway to get off to a good start and pad some stats.
And they play it's just projections. But when you look at the FanDuel over and under for win totals, they play 5 of the worst 6 teams in the SEC. Correct. In terms of projected win totals. So it's not like the schedule's – it's not A&M soft, but it's not crazy like hard either.
No, there's no murderer's row of things that they got to go through. I mean, they have, to your point, they have some good teams, but you're not looking like week after week. They don't have that. So
I'm going over.
I'll go the over. Now the question for me is just who leads the team, and that's the tricky one for me because I want to say certain things and to go with certain guys, but. When's the last time we've seen, how long has it been since we've seen a double-digit sack guy on this team? Was it the guy that got drafted by the Bengals? Was he the last guy?
I didn't quite get there. In fact, in Joseph Osai's last season at Texas, I think he had that 4 or 5 sack game against Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
But then he only had like one more sack the rest of the season. I think he finished with 6. I'm going to say that I'm going over the 36 and a half. And I'm going to say that Trey Moore finishes with 9.
Okay.
And that Ethan Burke finishes with 8-ish. And that Barron Sorrell is right there. I think all 3 of them break 7.5.
Okay. That's a good take. That's a good take. I don't.
It could be a hot overreaction.
I don't know if there's the numbers to prove that, but I like it. That means his defense is really, really effective. It also means the interior guys are really good as well. I don't know, but I like it. I'm gonna let you go out on that limb.
Well, look, Trey Moore's been a double-digit sack guy each of the last 2 years. I'm taking the under on him getting to double digits, but I think he's going to be really good. And the reports from camp do not suggest that Texas is looking at a player that's struggling with the adjustment from UTSA to Texas. He's going to see single, that's a guy that saw double and triple teams at UTSA. He's not going to have to worry about that at Texas. Mm-hmm. Ethan Burke had 5.5 last year. I'm only bumping that up by a couple. And I think, Barron Sorrell a year ago led the Big 12 in quarterback pressures, but he wasn't able to get guys on the ground. I'm going to say that he gets a few more guys on the ground. And the next thing you know, you're looking at a bunch of guys that can hit 7.5 plus a piece. But I'm not going out on a limb and saying that anybody's going to be a double-digit sack guy. I think Moore has a chance. The thing you see about Trey Moore is he'll get hot and he'll have a few monster games in a season. And I think Texas is going to have an offense that's going to force other teams to throw. Texas is going to score a lot of points. So you would think that teams will be playing catch up. And I think Trey Moore's got a chance to have a few games where he puts maybe 2.5, 3 sacks together. If he only has 2 of those types of games, suddenly what he has to do the rest of the season isn't absurd in order for him to get to the 9-ish, maybe even 10 kind of number. Mm-hmm. But I think this is the best group of defensive ends collectively that haven't even mentioned Colin Simmons, haven't even mentioned, they bring back guys like Justice Finkley and Jamon Tappan. There's a conversation that we could have about those guys. That doesn't even include a guy like Zena Umuzalo. There, look at me on a Monday.
There you go. I can't do it.
Now we're talking like 7, 8 guys that at worst are serviceable and at best have a chance to be, I think, Sunday players and certainly plus pass rushers at the collegiate level.
Yeah, and then you haven't even thrown in like the off chance of Anthony Hill, on those blitz packages being able to get to the quarterback as well, right? So because we know he's pretty effective at that too. So you're right. It's interesting for me, Catch. I think you are maybe talking me into Trey Moore a little bit more. I think I'm a little more reserved about him only because I want to see him do it on this level. But your points you make about him as far as, hey, probably having more single coverage and stuff, that makes a lot more sense, to me. So your arguments for him are pretty convincing. I think I'm a little, just like I said, just a little reserved on him because I want to see it on this level. I think, and again, it might be a little bit of an insult, but I've seen like the Devin Richardsons who have put up the numbers at one place and then he came here and they were just a guy, kind of person. And so and I've seen it for other guys who are at these smaller level programs come here and you just never really translated. I just want to see it happen. It's not to say I won't. I just want to see it happen before I go too far into it.
I think that's fair. I think that if Look, I have this theory that I've been talking about for half a decade now, that the Trey Moores of the world are the profile player. And Jared Verse is a good example of this. He did this at Florida State, where you dominate at a smaller level, and then you steal that guy, you poach that guy. But to this point, I have to give Jared Verse as the example of the good example, because at Texas, there hasn't yet been an example of a player who's really come. Isaiah Nayor didn't do it at Wyoming. We haven't yet seen the guy from the smaller school show up and just flat out ball out that becomes the Texas version of the success story, that the next time Trey Moore rolls around, your muscle memory will go, oh yeah, no, like, of course it can happen. I think your hesitation is fair, because up until now, we haven't seen a player like Trey Moore succeed. And I'll be honest, going into this camp, I wondered what the rhetoric would sound around Moore. How would our sourcing talk about him? You know, we had a source, I think it was in the War Room on Thursday night, talk about he went bull rush and midway through converted a spin move and went speed outside. And a lot of people were like, what's the big deal? And it's like, well, that hasn't happened a lot at Texas. One of the reasons why they haven't had double-digit sack guys is that, you know, even Joseph Osai might not have been a one-trick pony, although when you look at his stats, I mean, they weren't great. They haven't had a guy who could mix in different skills and strengths as a pass rusher. Charles Omenihu in recent years maybe have been the best, but I can close my eyes and see the Charles Omenihu pass rush success. Like, he had his way, and there wasn't a lot of diversity to it. I think the thing about Moore that's kind of exciting is that he's not a one-trick pony. He's not a guy that's just doing it with speed on the outside. And it's like, oh, this guy's just been playing slugs at offensive tackle at the lower levels. So he's just faster and quicker than those guys. Hearing that he actually has some power to mix in with his speed makes me think his chances of converting his success from UTSA over to Texas, I'm not going crazy and saying that he's going to match the numbers that he did at UTSA, but I'm comfortable saying that I think he's a guy that can be better than what Texas has had in the he can do better than 5.5, which is what Ethan Burke did a year ago. But I also think that Ethan Burke potentially can do better than 5.5. And I think if Barry, if you're out there, I bet Barry would come in here and tell us that Barron can do better than 5.5. Now, they all can. Will they? That's one of the big challenges on this year's defense. I'm buying the idea that the answer is going to be yes. But I won't like scoff at the person who says, slow down. You know, all of these guys, Barron Sorrell, yes, may have had more pressures than anybody in the Big 12, but he hasn't been a sack guy like that. Trey Moore is making an adjustment to a much higher level of classification of football. It's like a guy coming from 2A or 3A at the high school level and then asking him to do it at the 6A level. You know, it's an adjustment. It's not as easy as add water, instant rose bush, and look at how he blooms. So I feel you, but I feel like you and I are actually really close on this. Yeah. You know, we both are thinking more than 32. We're buying 36.5, but we may not go crazy and say something like 40 plus. We may just say, you know, an improvement of 4.5 to 5. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and I would just say last thing on that one. My opinion, Trey Moore is the victim of the people who have come ahead of him, and not necessarily. And I know you just got to judge them, but Trey Moore. Just if you're listening, I've heard of things about Trill Carter before he came here. I heard about Diamante Tucker Dorsey when he was going to come here. Isaiah Nayer is on that list. Tariq Milton is another guy that balled out somewhere else. Didn't do much when he got here. There's a Devin Richardson. And then there's a conversation that could be a little bit, maybe somewhat productive, but a Darian Dunn came from a smaller program. And it was like, oh my God, this guy's about to go to NFL. Well, he's just going to do one more year here at Texas, and then he's going to go pro. I don't even know if he's playing professionally anywhere at this moment. That's the only thing with me, Trey. There's been a lot of guys who come ahead of him that had the same profile, and they've gotten here.
I think the only guy of that group that had the same profile is Nayor. All of the other guys that you mentioned, Devin Richardson was a redshirt freshman at New Mexico State who had a really solid season, but he kind of got by on playing pretty good against Alabama in one game. That, if that game doesn't happen, and he had no other scholarship offers. When Texas took Devin Richardson, he had 0 offers outside of Texas in the portal. Trey Moore ends up being a guy that Alabama wanted, Ohio State was interested in, certainly had the offers. That's why I think Nayor best compares. I also think if there's one other guy that I think the Darian Dunn is a good shout. And I always wonder if Darian, and what's interesting about Darian Dunn is by the end of that last season, everybody, you thought, man, one more year and maybe that guy, because he ended up being a pretty good player the last half of the season. But that was a Tom Herman take through the portal about 5 minutes before Steve Sarkisian showed up. And Darian Dunn had to have been wondering, like, what just happened? What just happened? And Sarkisian wasn't really buying the Darian Dunn thing until late in the year. Boy, you'd like to have had one more season with that guy. But no, I don't think that guy's getting played to play football right now. But I think Nayor and Dunn are the two guys that best fit maybe the Trey Moore profile. Mm-hmm. Would Nayor have hit without the injury?
That's the biggest unknown. Like, that's the one thing. Well, because it's a good. He was going to be that guy.
It looked like it, didn't it?
Yeah, and he was going to be that dude, and then that injury hit, and it just was never the same. And by the time he was healthy, Sark had brought in enough guys where he was just a guy at that point.
If Nayor doesn't get hurt, Adonai Mitchell may never happen at Texas.
Yeah.
Nayor has, let's say, 900 yards at Texas, maybe not quite good enough to go pro, and they don't feel desperate. They knew they needed Adonai Mitchell way before that 2022 season was over with. That thing was kind of known before the end of November. So, Nayor's demise ends up being the thing I think that makes Adonai Mitchell happen. By the way, Billy says Jay Witt makes an NFL roster. I'm with you on that, Billy. You know what NFL coaches love, and Anwar can attest to this. They like guys that show up, put in work, and they need the bottom 20 guys on their roster to show up every day, work hard, and when they get a chance, play well. They don't need guys that are going to make waves. They want team first guys. Jay Witt will be on a low salary. He's got a chance. And at worst, I think he makes a practice squad. And I could see Witt being a guy that with a year on the practice squad, maybe he's able to carve out a career. When he's healthy, he blocks hard. I mean, he does a lot of the little things that don't make headlines in college, but man, I've seen worse players from Texas create really good NFL careers because they do all the little things and they shut up, and coaches love that.
Yeah, I think I don't have Jordan Whittington as a guy who gets drafted. For me, like I don't see that. But nice. I don't see, but I see him as a priority, undrafted free agent, a guy that's within the first 15 minutes is already signed with the team of his choice. Which, by the way, you start getting around the 7th round anyway. where I think he would be 6th or 7th. You know,
You'd rather control your destiny at that point.
Yeah, you don't want to, like, you know what? They already took a receiver in the first, another guy in the third, and they just grabbed me with a compensatory pick in the 7th round. You know, now, you know, because of the 10 guys that they've got, like, you want to be able to say, all right, I want to choose my path, and I definitely see him as a guy that chooses his path. But yeah, and to your point, get there. Probably practice squad guy. He's got to get healthy. You know, they've got to find a way to make sure that guy stays healthy. That's my only reason why I don't think he gets drafted. I think the injury thing. The last thing I think a guy with an injury history needs to have is injuries while he's going through the pre-draft process. Like that's probably not the best sell for that. But I think somebody will say, all right, we'll pick him up as an undrafted free agent. It won't cost us a thing.
Rodolfo wants to make sure you know I miss the good old days when we had the Drunk Unk show.
I missed it, Rodolfo. I missed those days too, and it's hard to be everything for everyone, man. I missed it. I had a lot of fun, but Rodolfo, we're at a point where you're talking about starting at 9 o'clock, doing it until 10, and then waking up the next morning and doing another show. It's kind of hard to fit it all in when we're doing shows every single day. So I do miss the fun and the personality, having the drinks and all the other kind of stuff. It was fun.
Hey, who knows? Maybe, you know, like there's nothing that says that if Anwar gets a hair that he could just pop on and do an occasional Drunk Unk. But boy, Rodolfo, I think sometimes everybody underestimates how much we work.
You know, they see us here. They're like, oh, you guys got on the show at 9 o'clock. It's like, no, well, we started prepping at like 7. Okay. Like that. You saw us here at 9, like, but by the time we get done at 10, by the time 10 o'clock is hit, we've already worked a good 5 hours.
I got 3 shows today. Like, you know, like we're all Rodolfo. We're just, you know, we're trying to follow the YouTube analytics and do the shows at the times that the YouTube analytics say we need to be doing the shows. For instance, you know, between Twitter and inside YouTube, we're close to 600 watching right now. Like, you know, this is a good spot, but we fully understand where you're coming from. Who doesn't miss Drunk Unk entertaining us in the middle of the week? And Anwar, who you kidding? An hour show? Come on now. That thing maybe started at like 9:03 and would go till about 10:30. And God forbid I jump on with you, because then we're definitely going to 11.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. It's definitely tough. Hey, can I have a non-sports overreaction for a second?
Ooh, I love those.
And I saw somebody put something in the chat. Can I say that if today you feel the need to pull an April Fool's joke on someone, you might be pretty lame. Like I think someone said something about somebody was supposed to go to On 3. They put that in the chat, like, and it was supposed to be, I guess, like some sort of April Fool's joke, or Will Fall going to On 3 or something like. I don't know. Either way, April Fool's jokes are so lame. Just like, guess what? I'm quitting my job today. April Fool's. Like, are you like 5? Are you 6? Like, if you really are doing an April Fool's joke today, really just reconsider where you are in life.
Hey, did you go to the Austin FC game on Saturday?
I did not.
Actually, one time you don't go.
You know why, Catch? Because I've gone 2 times before that, and both were ties. And I'm like, dude, these tickets are not cheap, okay? So I'm not a season ticket holder. So when you're talking about dropping like $300 to watch a tie, I'm like, man, I ain't doing this. I think one was a loss. I think both were ties. Anyway, I was like, man, I'm not doing it. So, of course, the one time that I don't go, they beat Dallas, you know, because Drusy is finally healthy.
A healthy Drusy makes a big difference, and maybe the team woke up on Saturday. But I was watching the game and thought of you and was going to send you a message. I think, no, I'm going to let Anwar alone on Saturday, probably because if I send him a message asking if he's at the game and he's not at the game, they're probably going to hear a whole lot of – and the one time, yeah. So, no, yeah. I got it.
I actually went out on Lake Travis on Saturday is what I decided to do. What's left of it.
Yeah, well, you can't go wrong with that. It's always a good time. Give me another Monday overreaction.
Yeah, I got another one. Yeah, I got another one that's kind of it plays off of what we talked about earlier. And sometimes, live catch, there's certain things that people say, but it's what they don't say. And my overreaction is this might be the year of Quinn, because out of all the things we're hearing in practice reports, what we're not hearing is that Quinn is giving up the ball.
Yep.
Quinn is throwing interceptions. Like the DBs are attacking this guy. Like I've been here long enough to hear the practice reports.
You know how it goes.
Yes, and it's like look at the quarterbacks. Look at these interceptions that they're throwing, and I've heard nothing. I've heard nothing about a DB shining or doing anything spectacular, and I hear a lot of good things. I think as relates to Quinn, but the thing is, what we're not hearing is about that quarterback struggling. And I think now when I think about Quinn going into year 3, that's kind of one of my hot takes. Like this might be the year of Quinn, just for how silent it's been from any kind of. I haven't heard of one quarterback mistake. Catch, I haven't even heard a report of an interception. Now, clearly, I'm sure that's happened, right? But I haven't even. You've heard it like over the last couple of years, like two interceptions in the scrimmage, 4 interceptions in the scrimmage, right? We've heard those. I haven't heard anything like that.
2 years ago, we thought that might have been the thing that if Quinn was going to lose the job to Hudson Card, that it might be the mistakes and not the big plays that defined how that thing rolled out. Now, it didn't go that way, but when we were having conversations about it, Quinn would turn the ball over. You make a great point, Anwar, because Friday, our practice report, I made the post, but we combined notes from a couple of different sources on that. And Arch almost got intercepted. Almost. Apparently, Warren Roberson almost jumped him inside the red zone and would have had like an 80, 90-yard return, pick 6 for a touchdown. Almost, because he dropped the ball. Mm-hmm. And then I thought, interesting that our sources made sure to note an almost interception, but there were no other reports on that day, at least, of any interceptions. The closest there was an almost interception. And that's been pretty consistent throughout camp. Sometimes if you're reading stuff at Orange Bloods or you're listening to us talk, sometimes you do have to ask yourself, what are they not saying? What's not being said? What's not being reported? So far, you haven't heard us talk about turnovers. And if they were occurring, we'd be talking about them.
Yes.
And so, I think that I'll give you my hot take. It's funny that you had yours. I've got one that piggybacks off that related to the quarterbacks. I think this might be the best 1-2 punch that Texas has had at the quarterback position in 20 plus years. That I don't know how good Quinn's going to be. It's hard to define exactly what that is. But I feel like he's really good. I feel like Arch is getting better and is also the one thing you hear people say consistently is, if Arch had to come in and play, wouldn't sweat at all. Like had one guy tell me last week, when Texas is forced eventually, when Ewers leaves for the NFL, that the transition from Ewers to Arch will be the easiest quarterback transition that Texas has maybe ever had. That it will be seamless, if you will. Nobody's suggesting that Arch is, I shouldn't say nobody. There are people who say it and you just kind of look at them and go, no, it's not happening. But I think the 1-2 punch of Ewers and Manning, by the time you get to the season, I'm not saying that Ewers will be the best quarterback that Texas has had in 20 years, but I think the 1-2 punch, the lack of huge drop-off between 1 and 2, I think you'd have to go back to when our very own Chance Mock was on campus in 2003, and you had Vince and Chance, and that your backup quarterback, while he played for the first 5-6 games of the season, was a top 10 guy in the country in quarterback efficiency. But if you wanted to say, yeah, well, Vince wasn't even ready to be quarterback then. He just ran around like his head was cut off. And maybe you'd have to go back to Sims and Applewhite. But regardless, even a year ago when Malik did have to come in, you wondered what will it mean? How much of a drop-off will the offense have? I think the fact that we're not hearing about turnovers from the quarterbacks at all bodes really well for the quality of the play we're going to see at the position this year. And if Ewers does have to miss a game or two, because it's kind of an annual thing at this point until he proves otherwise, I don't know that we'll see a big dip. That Arch might not quite be Quinn when he would have to play, but he won't be so far back that people are complaining about the offense, not being able to hit the same level of strides.
Yeah, I mean, I since I've been here, Catch, there really hasn't been what I would call the heir apparent to the starter, right? There have been guys who've been backups who you just maybe have thrown in because maybe the starter wasn't that good, but it hasn't been like, hey, as soon as this guy who's the starter finishes his business, then that guy is going to come in and be the next whatever and pick up where it's left off. It's been kind of like a chicken with your head cut off kind of thing. I'm just going from my time here, from the David Ash to the Tyrone Swoops to the Gerard Hurd to
your time here now, though, is like a decade plus.
Yes, well, it's been a lot.
We're at a point now where we almost have to stop talking about you like you're the new kid on the block.
That's true. Now, to be fair, I guess so. So you're talking about, I've seen, Tyrone Swoops gets the job because David Ash has a concussion, and Gerard Hurd gets the job just because Tyrone Swoops really isn't cutting it, and then Hurd wasn't cutting it, so you have to go back to Swoops, and then it's the Shane Buechele is going to come in here and do some certain things, and then it ain't even close, but that team finishes 5-7, so the conversation doesn't matter. And then you go into, okay, Sam Ehlinger is going to be good, and Sam Ehlinger and Buechele, they kind of go back and forth, injuries in the first year. Eventually, Sam takes over the one good season, and Sam was good. And then we get into the Casey Thompson and Hudson Card debates, and they were just like, like they're just nothing great. And so Quinn has been the guy that's almost stabilized the room, but not only stabilize it, takes it up to another level where you talk about, okay, that's a guy. I mean, he'll get drafted way higher than what Sam Ehlinger was drafted, right? So you're talking about a guy who will compete for a day one spot, and you're talking about, but the guy behind him is just a Manning, right? That's what and when he comes in, he'll be fine. And then after that, then we'll see what happens, because you got the kid from Alabama. That's the possibility of him coming in, and not possibility. He's committed at this point. And so, you see it can go. So, yeah, Catch, I'm with you as far as like the stability stuff, the stability of the quarterback room. I think you're right. From a 1-2 punch, I mean, to have a legit QB1 and legit QB2, yeah, that's unheard. That's unheard. Probably going back to now, I will say it predates me because I haven't seen it.
I got one more hot take for you.
All right.
I think this may be the best offensive line since 2006 and 2005, 2006, which is regarded as the best offensive line in the modern day history of the program. I like this offensive line, and I like the fact that we're at a point where Hayden Connor he's spilled blood. He's got like 24+ starts under his belt. He's a senior now, and he's fighting for his job, like legitimately. And it speaks to the continued development that Kyle Flood has with guys, that 2022 recruiting class. Now they're going into their third year. Now, we don't talk about them as young players anymore. This is when the light switch should come on. And previously, the two guys that are really ahead of the curve, Kelvin Banks, DJ Campbell. Banks as a first-year player, Campbell last year. That's what it looks like when you have 5-star level guys. They are, generally speaking, ahead of the curve. You would expect that to be the case. But with everybody else, I have been very patient to say, give those guys time to develop. You really want to see them start to take off going into year 3, and that years 3 and 4 should be when those guys, if they're ever going to be really good players, this is when we start to see it. I think you're kind of starting to see it with Cam Williams. You're starting to see NATO emerge as a guy that's pushing for a starting job in Hayden Connor's place. You've got Jake Majors, who is never going to be great, but he was pretty damn good last year. Probably the third best lineman behind Campbell and Banks.
Yeah.
Now he enters his 4th year as a starter. You don't really hear people bitching about Majors the way they were a year ago. Like, he shored that up. I don't know if I'm going to get to the point where I say it ever gets over the hump and is better than that national championship offensive line that had 4 out of 5 guys play a lot of time in the NFL. You know, Blaylock, longtime NFL starter, got his pension. Jonathan Scott, same thing. Casey Studdard, played in the league a long time. Lyle Senline was a starting center in the Super Bowl. Gets all four guys get their NFL pension from that group. But I could see this group being that kind of a group. And if they get back to the playoffs and have success and make a run at a championship year 1 of the SEC, their legacy may be that they end up being talked about just maybe a hair or a breath below that group. But I think we're at a point where no one's going to question the Texas offensive line. And we might be talking about a group that legitimately is one of the 5 best in college football going into this season. It's taken some time to get there, but that big 7-man offensive line class in 2022, they're now 3rd-year players instead of babies. And I think the expectations and the contributions and actual performances are starting to warrant the investment that the coaches have put in there. And I don't think it's hyperbole to say we're going to be watching one of the best offensive lines that Texas has had in the last 2 decades. And when you combine that with Ewers and his level of play and a wide receiver group that people are excited about and a 1-2 punch at running back that might actually be a 1-2-3 or a 1-2-3-4 punch, you combine all of that and boy, there's a lot on that offense to like, but the offensive line doesn't have to take a back seat to really anybody in the conversation.
This is the irony catch to what you're saying. You know what the biggest critique and criticism that I've heard about the offensive line this entire spring has been, and it's a small one, but this is the irony of it. And some of these guys are just too big. That's literally the biggest critique that you've heard, that, man, these guys are just some guys need to lose a little weight. Like,
a little. Yeah.
Yes, and that's been the biggest thing. And that you go back to, there was a time you didn't have these kind of massive human beings that were on this team. You didn't have that happening at all. You didn't have, guys over 330 or anything to that effect. Now you just you're like, man, these guys are at 370. Like, they need some of these Connor Strohs and Kirkland, like, they need to lose a little bit of weight. That's the biggest critique that you've heard. So that, if that's it, that, they want large human beings, and some of these guys have gotten a little bit too large. That's a hell of a place to be, Catch. Like, that's literally a hell of a place to be. And to your point, you mentioned those guys who are competing for, who have their spots, the guys like Neto who are competing to get into the lineups and the backups, the emergence of a Gooseby, who we've talked about a little bit before, like him locking down that, as a guy who probably wasn't the highly of recruited, or at least from a number, not say highly recruited, what's the word I'm looking for? He didn't have the ratings as everybody else had, more of a project kind of guy, but for him coming into his own as well. Golly, I can't say enough good things about Kyle Flood and what he's been able to do with those guys and developing them and keeping them going. So yeah, we're almost at a point, Catch, as relates to that some of these backups are just going to probably be 2 and done kind of guys. You're just going to go in, you're going to play for 2 years and then go to the league. Like, that's where it's looking like.
Sam Williams may be that guy,
right? Yeah, he looks that way. Like, you're just going to come in, you're going to play 2 years, and that's it. And that might be it for a lot of different positions as well. So not only that. So, hey, before we get out of here, though, Catch, can I get one last one?
Give it to me.
the answer your question from your column on yesterday, which by the way, I usually read at like 1 o'clock in the morning. So just don't hopefully judge it for
Finish
you
it
know.
too.
The question of with Eddie Reese, kind of his time and tenure coming to an end, who is the best coach on campus? It's Vic Schaefer for me. I think he's a total badass. Regardless of what happened yesterday in that game, they came against just an athletic. I mean, those women that they're playing against were long, lean, and athletic. No matter what, to be able to do what he did without Rory Harmon to get them this far, I think Vic Schaefer's a total badass recruit, total badass coach. Like he is to me the bar as far as where the coaches are of this, as far as the consistency and everything, winning a Big 12 championship, all that. So for me, Vic Schaefer, even though the ladies lost, Vic Schaefer, hats off to him, hats off to what they've accomplished on that side. I think to your question in your column is, okay, how did they get past this Elite Eight and how did it go further? And I think that's a good question without the shooters, but nonetheless, still a really damn good coach.
You lose Rory Harmon for the entire season. She's your best player. You're only All-American when it goes down. And it still end up earning a number 1 seed and getting to the Elite Eight and it feeling like a disappointment when you don't have your best player. I think Jarrett Elliott with multiple national championships in the volleyball program probably has to be mentioned.
Yeah, sure.
But I understand the Vic shout. And I guess the only thing I would say, you'd like for Sarkisian at some point to be in the contention of that thing. It's probably a couple of seasons away where you would say, yeah, no, in his own sport, he can compete with Vic. It says a lot that Vic's done it at multiple schools. He does it. I love the fact that he has the Minister of Defense nickname. Like, you know you're doing a good job when badass nicknames like that are coming to you nationally and not just from hometown fans. Guys, do us a solid. I want to mention it again. Hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, get notifications, all those things. I've got House Divided with Chad Hastings coming up at 12. We've got the recruiting hour later today as well. Big day of shows planned all day long right here on Orange Bloods Live. Anwar, you got anything else?
Listen, first of all, there's over 700 of you guys watching this show this morning. So first of all, thank you. But if you can, half you guys hit the like button. But if all of you guys hit the like button, that would be amazing. That's it. I don't know what the practice schedule looks like tomorrow, or if we'll be back. But no, that's it, man. I had a great Easter. I hope everybody else had a fantastic Easter as well. My kids did as well. Family did. Made a honey baked ham catch. It was really spectacular. I was really proud of myself. So yeah, man.
Volleyball for Anwar.
Thank you. Yeah, it was. People loved it. Had some people over. So I hope everyone had a good Easter.
And a reminder: go over to rogueshop.com. I mentioned it earlier. Topicals, oils, Delta 8 products, where you can get the lollipops and just, lollipop your way to a good afternoon. The vape carts, the batteries, they got all the supplies, vitamins, supplements, beverages, hemp flowers. They got stuff for pets. They got miscellaneous. What you need to go do is just check out the website, find out what's for you, because there's so many different kinds of products. Everybody's got like a different flavor, a different way of kind of getting their product on from Rogue Shop. But whether it's you, your grandparents, your mom, your daughter, well, maybe not your daughter. If she's over 18, your daughter and your or your dogs, like everybody can feel better, can live a healthier life, can be a little bit less in pain. Just go check out the website and find out what's for you, and they will take care of you. Shar and Richard will make sure you're 1,000% taken care of. We'd love them as partners. Write them Google reviews. If you've bought from them in the past, go write them a super positive review on Google. It means the world to them. For myself and Anwar Richardson, the two men dressed in black today, we will see you later on throughout the day and throughout the week here on Orange Bloods Live. Take care. Have a great Monday. See you.